Good morning, Chair Dela Cruz, Vice Chair Keith Algaron, Senator Noy, Senator Cahelli. Thanks for the opportunity to testify in support of this bill. I'm Dan Brinkman, the Regional CEO for Hilo Medical Center in the East Hawaii region. I think it's a true statement to say that residents of East Hawaii and the Big Island are needlessly dying from heart attacks. The standard of care has become where we can prevent heart attacks before they become either life-threatening or debilitating, and we now have that ability in our region to be able to safely and effectively offer that care. Much of the infrastructure is in place. I guess you could say we're like on the 20-yard line and we need some help to get it into the end zone. It's kind of a difficult conversation a bit given the previous conversations about expense. But in the long run, preventing these heart attacks, preventing all the rehabilitation that's required, the transport costs to send people to Oahu will reduce tremendously the amount of cost incurred by the systems, not to mention what it will do for the various lives and people that will be saved. If the committee allows, I'd like to also introduce Dr. Jerry Gray, one of our East Hawaii Regional Board members and a 15-year physician in our ER, for some comments, please.
Thank you. If you notice an accent when I speak, it's because I learned to talk as a boy in Texas. But I've had the privilege to work at Hilo Medical Center in the emergency department, having recently retired from a career of 35 years in emergency rooms all over the country. But primarily the last 15 years I was in Hilo working in the emergency department. During that career, I prided myself in really focusing on being able to diagnose and treat things that were time sensitive and critical to the care of the patients. Now, I have to tell you, that can be stressful work in the emergency room, as most of you can guess, but I have to tell you, in my career, the most stressful thing I ever encountered is when I have a patient come to me and I figure out what they need. I make the diagnosis and I know exactly what needs to be done, and then I cannot do it for them. And more difficult, I cannot arrange for them to get it done in an expedient manner. It's basically logistics. Queens Medical Center has always been very nice to try to help us, but there's times they're running into bed capacity issues. We have transportation issues. We're dealing with a critical condition that minutes are counting. The standard of care in the United States now is that the patients with acute heart attack conditions are treated in a cath lab within 90 minutes of their arrival to the emergency department. That is not achievable from the Big Island unless we do it on the Big Island. And I agreed upon my retirement a year ago to serve on the board of East Hawaii the East Hawaii region of HHSC, with an understanding that they would tolerate my advocacy of this one single issue. This is the one thing that you can help us do that will improve the chances of survival and better health outcomes for everyone that lives on the Big Island. Heart attacks are not predictable. Any of us that live or visit on the Big Island can be struck without notice and end up in the emergency department where skilled people do the best they can for them. But I can tell you, each time that happens, we all know it's going to happen. We're scrambling to try to find a way to get the patient to the resource they need, and it is never fast enough. Any questions, I'd be glad to hear them.
Members, any questions? Thank you.
The numbers. Say we were able to bring this lab online, not just the numbers in East Hawaii, but how many patients come to the HMC on an annual basis suffering from stroke or heart attack?
So for heart attack, we're looking in the East Hawaii region, which is half of the Big Island, roughly, somewhere around 70, what you would call the big ones, full-blown heart attacks every year. That number's held pretty consistent. Actually, it's gradually crept up over the last couple of years. If you extrapolate that to the entire island, which is about 200,000 people, you're looking at about 140. But when you operate a lab, you not only treat the big one, you also are able to treat blockages before they turn into a full heart attack. So interventional labs in general, we are looking at somewhere around 200 to 250 procedures each year, ultimately going to about 275 just for the East Hawaii region. So you're almost doubling that to about 500 interventional procedures to include treating for heart attack. The reason that number is important is the program should be self-sustainable. Should be sustainable. We're not looking for a subsidy for this for year after year. Basically, when you start a program like this, you have startup costs because as you bring in these physicians and you build that staff, the revenue, if you'll look at it in money terms, doesn't show up overnight. You take a couple years to build that. But once you build it, we have, I don't mean this lightly, a captive market. We have a population that needs it. These procedures are generally well reimbursed. And while I don't think much in the state system really makes a lot of money, given a lot of factors and who we care for, we do believe this component will be self-sustaining. So we're not looking for a handout forever. We just need enough help to make it a reality.
So our hospitals at Ka'u, Kona, North Hawaii Community Hospital, all of those patients could quickly get to HMC to do this interventional procedure.
So one of the changes, I guess, that has made this much more of a reality is the completion of the Saddle Road.
Right.
So Saddle Road, depending on where you are, you can get to Kona as quick as an hour and 15 minutes. Much of the East Hawaii service area is within that golden hour. And then for the rest of the island, depending on some variables, large parts of it, you could, working with EMS, get to a lab within the 90 minutes. Even on the times when you cannot. So say it takes 2 hours to get to that lab. 2 hours is a heck of a lot better than 5 hours in Oahu. Okay? And really it's a very simple equation. It's just your muscles starve for blood. And the longer it's starved, the more of it dies. So if you're there in 2 hours, you're saving a whole lot more heart than you would if you had 5 hours and most of your heart's dead.
When will we be able to bring this fully operational online if we were able to get the appropriation for Hilo? When?
So our goal is to have this operational by somewhere around June of next year. So that would be 2019. The major variable is our recruitment of interventional cardiologists, but we have one who we hired to start the program, and we believe that's a feasible timeline.
Are there any cases in the last year or when we had a situation where we had to evacuate a patient from Hilo Medical Center to Oahu or potentially Maui, but we did not have any air transportation available, no helicopter, no plane, and so the patient had to wait?
I think the short answer to that is no, and you're saying not available at all. There have been times, a significant number of times, where the patient does have to wait because planes aren't just sitting, they're going back and forth. So if you're the most fortunate, the plane is sitting there, the crew is there, and you're on it. But often the plane is en route. You have to be, quote, packaged and brought there. That's why when we say it's 3 to 6 hours, it's because of those variables. When you're in a situation where 90 minutes is probably your most to have a really good outcome, that's just an eternity.
That it can cost anywhere from $25,000 to fly by fixed-wing aircraft from Hilo to Oahu, and up to $75,000 to fly from helicopter from either Hilo Medical Center to Oahu or from Hilo Airport to Oahu. Is that true?
Those numbers are correct. You talk about what's the cost to the patient, what the true numbers are, and so forth. I've heard those ranges. I've seen bills of that expense. You basically are chartering a private plane that has really a fly-in ICU, and that type of expense and liability is very, very expensive. And someone pays, whether it's the plan, the individual, or the taxpayer.
And obviously, it's not just the patient; it's their family members that need to pick up at a moment's notice and also fly to Oahu for the duration of the time the patient is on Oahu. Right?
You know, the stories we hear from people who you only think about the patient, but just imagine if it was your loved one you can't leave them over there by themselves. They're fighting for their lives. You have to, and many families can't afford that, or they go into debt just to be able to support their families. And the one other thing that's also a soft or a hidden cost is not everyone dies. You're what they call a cardiac cripple. So you can barely breathe when you walk. You have to go through rehab. You have to do all these various things to just extend your life. That has an enormous expense for the organization, for the healthcare system. And if you could have just stopped it when it started, we would avoid a lot of costs.
All right, thank you, Chair.
Thank you.